Hello, I'm Connor Fowler.
And I'm Matt Smith.
Welcome to Apocalypse Duds. Today we are joined by writer, editor, adult skateboarder, menswear take generator, and more. Here's Pete Anderson. Among the other Pete Andersons, we had a hard time looking you up, so this is your intro.
There is like a relatively well-known, I think, country guitar player.
Yeah.
Pete Anderson. Yeah, so it's hard for me to differentiate myself from him.
Yeah,
right.
He was the first person that came up, and I think he played for Dwight Yoakam at one point, who I absolutely love, but I do not know this dude from Adam. So I was just like, oh, okay, this is gonna be harder than I thought.
I have a Pete Anderson tour T-shirt somewhere in my
nice.
archives. That's fun to wear.
Solid. Yeah. How's everything going today?
It's going pretty well. Happy to be here with y'all chatting on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, dude, thank you for coming on, and it's gonna be a fun conversation, I think, and I don't know, I've followed you for so long that it's like, oh cool, I get to know what his voice fucking sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, that was one of the things with Zach when we interviewed him. I was like, you do not sound anything like I would have imagined. Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting a very deep, gravelly kind of voice, and I was like, oh, okay, all right.
It can be tough. You follow people for a long time online, and you communicate with them and everything, but it's not always in person. So
yeah, totally. I'm not a big fan of voice messages either. Mostly. So,
yeah. Well, it is 2023. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're gonna get into a little section we call ASL as a throwback, but we really only care about ANL. So, how old are you, and where are you from?
I'm 42 years old, and I live in Maryland, just outside of Washington D.C. in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay, all right.
And I've been in Maryland for most of my adult life now. But I grew up west of Philadelphia.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's a nice little Central Atlantic jaunt for your life.
Yeah, I haven't really gone too far. I mean, I'm all within a 2 or 3 hour radius from where I grew up. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit like why leave, It makes me think having seen other places when the guys who were getting started with this country found this place, Maryland, they were like, this is going to be the fucking place forever.
Yeah.
And they were kind of right. It's very beautiful, at least from a natural standpoint, extremely beautiful.
I appreciate your Maryland pride.
Yeah, dude, I'm fucking only Maryland. I grew up in Annapolis, around Annapolis, and then I moved to Baltimore. So I have been here my entire life, and I am extremely, I love Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore's terrific.
Yeah. I've been a handful of times playing shows there, but I've never really gotten to hang out in Baltimore. But
not yet.
Not yet. It will happen probably this year. But that has always seemed like a pretty similar place to Atlanta, and so I think I can dig it and get down with it. Also, Philly is one of my favorite cities that I've ever been to, and so there's something in the water up there, I guess.
Yeah, I love Philadelphia. I always feel bad because I don't know it that much as an adult, so it's a very special place in my heart. But
totally,
I can't make a restaurant recommendation to save my life in Philadelphia now.
Same here, man. The two cheesesteak spots that I always used to go to when we were playing up there, they had vegetarian cheesesteak, and so I think they both closed now. But that was about it.
So, since we are a clothing show, we have a little feature, the Ensemble Investigation. Other names for it are trademarked, so we don't use them. And so we were going to ask you to run through, what are you wearing? What are you wearing today, as they say? Top down, bottom up, really your choice.
Well, I'm in my house right now, so I'm not wearing shoes. But earlier today, when I left the house, I was wearing a pair of Clark's crepe-soled shoes. I think they're the Redlands model, dark brown suede with like a crepe that runs up kind of on the over the toe and up the
Oh
heel.
yeah.
You know, kind of hippie boot kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
I've got a pair of pants. They're kind of peanut butter colored, herringbone cotton fabric with cargo pockets and pleats from the brand Manresa.
Damn, I'm looking that up because that sounds great.
Yeah, they're nice. He does kind of like limited drops. I'm not like trying to say that you can't get them. I'm just he does a lot. He does a lot of turnover in stock. So, good brand though. I got a chambray polo Ralph Lauren Western shirt on. And when I was outside earlier, I had like a barn jacket, hunting jacket, old. I hesitate to call it vintage, but it's probably vintage polo with like an exploded tartan kind of pattern to it.
Wow.
And I had a baseball cap on. I had a black Stussy New Era on outside when I was walking the dog earlier.
It's a competitive outfit.
Yeah, it kind of checks a bunch of boxes.
Yeah.
For like our general interests. So, what's the weather like up there right now?
It's been for winter it's not too bad. It's a little muddy. I think muddy is like I don't know if that's really a weather descriptor, but it's been
same down here.
Yeah, chilly, windy, not miserable though. Not too bad.
Okay. Yeah. So I think on this episode, this is our inaugural rolling out of this next question. But what is your earliest clothing memory?
That's a nice open-ended question. I guess I could name a lot of things, but I when I think of that, I think of a particular item.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how old I was, but I must have been pretty young, like 5 or 6 probably. I had a red hooded sweatshirt that I really loved, and I wanted to wear it like all the time. And I can't even picture it really, but I know what it was, and I can still kind of remember what it felt like, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And zip up? Did you say zip up?
No, this is a pullover like kangaroo pocket, kind of hooded sweatshirt. And I remember I used to argue with my mom a lot about it because I like to wear it like with no shirt underneath. I just like to wear the hoodie.
Yeah.
And she was always like, the point of it is a layer,
Right.
But I remember as a kid being not really picky about clothes, but kind of sensitive to how they felt. So I remember that particular hoodie, wanting to wear that as much as I possibly could, which obviously couldn't be every day.
Right. That's awesome though. I mean, I grew up loving hoodies in high school and shit too. Like it was one of those things that was just like a security blanket in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Flannel shirts.
Yeah, same.
Big time.
Flannel shirts also. We had to tuck our shirts in high school, but we didn't have like a dress code or anything. But that's part of the reason I learned to love hoodies, because I could just wear a t-shirt underneath it and not really have to worry about tucking it in.
Right.
So, and wait, did you say you don't really know how old you were with that?
I mean, I was pretty little. Like I said, I think maybe like 5 or 6 years old. So I'm trying to think of like what houses I lived in and where my memories of it are. And I think I couldn't have been older than 6.
Gotcha.
So that's little kid stuff.
Oh, totally. But I mean, it sticks out in your mind, so it obviously had an impact.
Oh, I thought about it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yo, you're ahead of the vintage curve these days, because that shit was probably sun faded.
I'm sure it was. By the time I was done with it, anyway.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, did you realize at some point that you liked clothing more than most people or more than your peers at some point? How did you get into clothing, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think I think I was pretty keenly aware of as you grow up and you kind of like find your interests and find your peer groups. I think I was pretty aware of kind of like clothing and kind of tribal identities as you kind of separate yourself out with peers. So I think I was pretty aware of that relatively early, and certainly by middle school. And I know that's not like, that doesn't necessarily make you special to like be aware of what people are wearing in middle school, but I was into some subcultural stuff at that point. Like I I spent most summers at my grandmother's house at the Jersey Shore, and
nice.
there was kind of a skate and surf culture down there. And I'm not a surfer. I'm not going to try to claim to that. I'm a total Benny. If people from New Jersey might or it's basically just New Jersey poser. So I was which is like kind of a through line through I think my middle school and high school life as being a kind of a poser. But I think I was aware of that stuff. Like I knew down there, like I'd go skateboarding down there with other kids, and I you wanted to have Vans. I don't think I was really particular about brands at that point, but I kind of knew the vibes you were looking for, and it was like at the time, yeah, exactly. Plaid shorts, big white T-shirt or some kind of surf T-shirt. That was kind of what you wanted to wear in the summer down there. So that's I think when I like can when I think back on like when did I first like think like, well, I want to wear X. I want to get clothes from the surf shop because that's what seems cool to me.
Right.
But otherwise, like, how did I get into clothes? I also I think Matt, I think it was you who mentioned you had to tuck your shirt in. I went to all boys Catholic school, high school. I went to Catholic school all the way through, so I was always wearing tucked in shirt and a tie from like
gotcha.
second grade up. So I was pretty comfortable with that, even though I wouldn't say I liked it. That wasn't something I wanted to wear in middle school or even high school. But in high school, we had it wasn't a uniform; it was a dress code. So you just had to wear, not jeans, a tucked in shirt of some sort, and a tie, and sometimes a jacket, sometimes a sweater. In high school, so that was kind of the first time I think I remember like thinking about clothes, those kind of clothes.
Right.
And it wasn't like I was trying to dress up. I mean, most of what we were trying to do, my friends and I back then, was like trying to dress it down. So like we were trying to get away with wearing Vans, and you could wear like suede Vans with black soles, and they counted as dress shoes, and nobody would give you a hard time. But like we were wearing like thrift store corduroys and flannel shirts with a tie, because like that meant
right.
You're trying to skirt the rules. And my mom volunteered at a thrift shop in the neighborhood back then, so we would pretty regularly get stuff from there that I could wear to school, and I would go to the thrift shop every once in a while and pick that stuff up. So I had a pretty early introduction to that kind of vintage shopping.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm right there with you. Like I think I started thrifting when I was 12, and I found like a BMX helmet that I really wanted, and they were expensive if you ordered one from somewhere. But I was like, oh, I can find this shit at a thrift store. Like, this is gnarly.
I got these Jeff Rowley skate shoes, and my dad is a notorious tightwad, but he like bought them for me $9, whatever it was, and I was like, holy shit, like these shoes cost $100, and here I am getting them for a single digit.
That's a good deal. Rowley had some good shoes too. I don't know if those
I was about to say,
yeah.
Like I don't know what the official name of it was. Like I think it was his second or third like Vans signature shoe. I wanted those so bad, just because they look so cool. Like compared to everything else of the like early 2000s, late 90s, I was like, oh, these are dope.
Yeah, those were good shoes, and he I know he had vegan shoes back then. He's kind of done a kind of a 180 on that at this point, but
yeah. It's okay. Like it was a very interesting time for sneakers, and I'll leave it at that. So Pete, you mentioned you're a skateboarder. Like, what other kind of outside influences, did you, or I guess have you had over the years, like music or films and things like that kind of influence your style and your excitement about clothing?
Yeah, I think music is probably kind of a through line through my, I think that, again, I think high school and college is like a really, not that I dress now like I dressed then, but I think that's like when you become aware of at least when I became aware of like people, how people are using it to express themselves. And again, like how they're kind of sorting themselves out by clothing. and high school was such. I mean, music was like the most important part of my life. Like,
Dude, yeah.
We as pretty young, my friends and I were able and allowed to go into Philly and go down to like South Street and hit the record shops there.
Oh, hell yeah.
And Repo Records out in Bryn Mawr too was like really formative and important place where we got lots of different music. And you'd kind of, look at that stuff or go to shows. And even back then, this is like early mid 90s, and I was 14 or 15 probably. You kind of borrow from some of the aesthetics, and sometimes those stores are also selling the aesthetic too. So like,
right, yeah.
Zipperhead in Philly was a place that sold like, double rider jackets, and
Ooh.
I think you get like Doc Martens and Crass t-shirts and stuff down there
right.
if you wanted to. So, it was a time for me to like, I tried on a lot of those different styles. And some of them worked for me and some of them didn't. But, you discover music and you get into it and you go to shows and you borrow something from that. So that was really, really influential to me. So, and that could mean like, being really into Pavement for a while and like wearing thrift store Western shirts from the 70s or whatever. And that was, a cool look, or like old Sauconys or whatever. Or wearing some more really kind of punk rock stuff, or getting into hardcore, like 90s hardcore. And it's also funny just looking back on the eras, because I remember getting into like, youth crew hardcore and like probably 1995 or 96 when I was a teenager, and like thinking that the Gorilla Biscuits were like 100 years old.
Right. When really Civ was probably like a decade older than you were.
Yeah, exactly. And all that stuff, all the music came out in like the late 80s, I mean, we weren't really that far past that. So, but that was easier that stuff was largely easier to wear, and also like more socially acceptable, in a way. Like, I had, I'll confess I had some Jinkos too back then, but
didn't we all?
Yeah. Didn't we all? But, wearing a hoodie, whether it was a band hoodie or just like a plain hoodie or some other kind of vintage hoodie, and some jeans or camouflage pants and skate shoes. That's an easy thing to wear. And, it's kind of a winking thing. Like, you and other kids might know that you're, nodding to being into 10-yard fight or whatever. But,
right. Yeah, because I mean, back then bands weren't like super well distributed too, and so like, in the mid 90s or whatever, like if you saw someone wearing Vans or like Chucks too, you were kind of like, oh, you're into something cool. Right.
That's all this stuff, when I look back on it, I think about it, it's just crazy to think of kind of the pre-internet nature of how that stuff got communicated. And I know, it's pretty common to say like, oh, well, somebody's older brother or something, knew, and that's how you knew I should wear Vans or I should wear Chucks or something, because like you just found, and that is true. But I still look back on it, I'm just like, I'm not quite sure. Like, we had a couple people around, like we had some cool like punk rock kids in my high school who were like, you'd look at the bands written on their backpack or whatever, and like they were the influencers, they were the tastemakers.
Totally.
Yeah, the one guy in my high school, Eric Peterson, was in the band The Orphans, and then he was kind of a big folk punk guy in Philadelphia for a while, and like, if something was Eric endorsed, it was, it was cool. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a really, really, really cool dude, and you learn a lot from those kind of guys when they're around.
Totally. Yeah, we all had that, like in one way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Or maybe we were that to other people that were younger than us,
I guess it's possible. I wrote a lot of crap in my backpack too.
So okay, we've got the hardcore, we've got the Jersey Shore. Did you ever see Floor Punch at the Shore?
I did not ever see Floor Punch at the Shore. I saw like Floor Punch, merchandise and records and stuff down there. I mean, it was The record store in the town where I went down there, Manasquan, New Jersey, always had a funny selection. I mean, they always had like Bouncing Soul stuff because they were kind of Asbury Park.
Right.
They always had like E-Town Concrete stuff, which is funny. And there's like a handful of other like Jersey, Long Island bands. They would always have stuff. But yeah, no, I never saw. I don't think I ever saw Floor Punch at all. So sorry to disappoint.
I mean, it was just if it happened, it was going to be such a magical like coming together of things all in one place. But nah. So do you in your day-to-day life, do you tend to plan your outfits?
Yeah, sort of. I don't like think about them. It was probably as unsophisticated, but I really do probably organize them around like a specific item I'd like to wear.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, me too. It's not like the question is not to say like, do you plan your outfits very detailedly in a very detailed way? And if you don't, you suck. Like, we just want to know, like, how does it come to you? You put something together today that was good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think about it sometimes. Like I think about like cooking. Like I love to cook, but I'm not necessarily a really creative person when it comes to cooking. Like I can follow a recipe. Yeah, I can modify a recipe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can I'll do it, and then next time I make it, I'll be like, well, I didn't like this so much. I'll tweak the cumin or whatever, And I think I'm a little bit that way with dressing too. That I'm not like the most creative or original person, but I can tell when things kind of work. So like if I want to wear, like today I wanted to wear that polo jacket. I felt like it was the right weather for it, and it's a cool jacket. So it's like, well, what can I wear that kind of works in that context? And I don't want to be like a free and easy flat lay photograph, like just like a perfect ideal, everything fits together exactly. And then because then you have to like change your vibe anytime you want to change or like wear a particular thing that's from. But I do think the very generally like Americana, that's like such an overused word, but like that stuff all plays pretty well with itself, with each other, those kind of pieces. So I think you can wear that kind of stuff together. I know it was like a joke a couple years ago to be like, oh, that person wears engineered garments like J. Crew, and I like to wear engineered garments like J. Crew. I feel like that works. Like those kind of things. There's a reason that like you can sometimes wear like ALD stuff with Ralph Lauren, with J. Crew, with vintage. It all kind of works together.
Yeah, it kind of all plays off of the same shit. So like, why wouldn't you mix and match that kind of stuff?
Some people probably say it's a little tired, but that's still kind of my wheelhouse. So I mean, that's who I am. Yeah.
EG is one of my favorite brands ever, just because everything is so damn comfortable. Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, I wear mostly vintage because I sell vintage, but like, engineered garments has always had that kind of feel that I get from like a vintage pair of fatigue pants. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not trying to like reinvent the wheel. It's just doing its thing.
Yeah, it's always a good vibe with engineered garments. So I still wear a lot of engineered garments too. But yeah, when I'm planning an outfit, it's usually I pick one thing, whether it's a pair of shoes or a shirt or. I mean, it's often outerwear, especially in the colder months, and then I just try to figure out what else I can wear. And I wear a lot of the same stuff. I mean, truthfully, I wear a lot of the same stuff all the time, and I usually seasonally have like either like one or two like outfits that like they just become the outfit of the season because it's easy for me to wear them.
I see. Good answer. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and I think that. Talking about those brands, and I don't want to like whatever, I am no expert, but I do think that they are, with maybe the exception of J. Crew, like flipping something that is traditional, like that is the ALD thing that for a long way has been Ralph. So I think that it makes sense. They're a little countercultural themselves. So I was going to ask, there seems to be a correlation between membership in these subcultures, you know, your skaters, your hardcore kids, punk kids, metal, etc. Why do you think these people are drawn to menswear after a while? It seems kind of antithetical, right? For like a punk to be into tailored clothing. But I mean, I know blah, 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 that's in there too. But anyway, we were wondering what you thought about that, if anything.
Yeah, I do think it's really interesting, and I've seen what you're talking about. I think a lot of it's always funny when you talk to people of menswear, and then eventually you find out you have other things in common, and
Right.
music is a common denominator.
Totally.
I think so. I think music is one of them, and I think as I was kind of referring to earlier, I think that people know how people dress to fit into a certain crowd or a certain crew, and I think like that's other people might who aren't into those subcultures or don't care or don't want to, you know, signal to other people what they're into might be kind of ignorant of those sometimes subtle uniform signals, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's just like people gravitate toward people who are into that stuff are often aware of those kind of things, and I think as they get more into it, they might gravitate towards that as they grow up and make their way in the world. They just kind of know about it, and they see it in other like non-subcultural things too. Like you talk about tailoring, like there are punks who get into tailoring, and there's like mods and things like that have a tailoring tradition, and I think people see that and they might be attracted to that, and also the music's good, so I'll try that out for a while. So I think that's like the common denominator. People are just very aware of how clothing speaks for them and what it can say to other people and what it can say about you. Other than, I think traditionally we think about like clothing, like what does clothing say for people who care about clothing, and a lot of it is economical, right? Like a lot of it is like I'm signaling that I have a lot I have more money than you,
More
or
than
I can
have.
Yeah, or that. Like
in my case, I'll speak for myself.
Well, I think the clothing I wear, considering the amount of money I've spent on it over the years, probably truly signals that I have less money than I should.
More money than sense.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah. It's very bad. But that's my kind of gut take on that. Is I think that that you're just, if you're into those kind of things, if you're into those scenes, you know, and especially as they like I said, like I went through a bunch of different musical identifications and looks in high school and college, and I think that a lot of that's pretty common for a lot of people. But there's some things that stick with you, and I think people kind of take that into adulthood and just and they're just more aware of that than your average person. Of those kind
it's about it is about like attention to detail to a certain extent. Not in my case, but I think a lot of people are like attuned to certain. You look at some of the like menswear people, the way that they analyze like the fit of a suit, they really, really, really are picking up on the fine details.
Absolutely. And if you go back, I'm trying to think of like specific examples, and I'm going to bring online menswear into this by saying there's a theory. I assume it's still there, a thread on Style Forum. I don't know what it's called. It used to be like mod to skinhead or skinhead to mod or something.
Oh,
like that.
Yeah, there's like I think like three or four different like threads. So like like it's reached its peak that many times.
Right. And so there's a lot of interest there, and you know, the people who are in that thread are like their own community. Like they're not even like reading the forum; they just exist on that thread. It's like their shared blog or whatever you have. And you mentioned attention to detail. And it's like there's people on that thread who were there in the late '60s, and there's people on the thread, and they'll post. That's a great place for like to find pictures of that kind of stuff, because those people aren't posting those pictures in other places. And there's people on the thread who got into it in the last 10 years or whatever, and they can share knowledge and awareness. But that attention to detail, it's like your Levi's had to be cuffed exactly X inches or centimeters.
And I remember fucking measuring I remember measuring my shit. Like, why the fuck did I do that?
Yeah, because that's the right thing to do. You know, that's the uniform. That's the
Right,
acceptable
the
number.
American Psycho quote, because I want to fit in.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
that is the whole satire of the thing, which of course, like, you sort of turn into a caricature of yourself.
Mhm.
So we were going to get into hashtag menswear first by asking, where were you when that really took off in the 2008 to 2012 period? I know you just mentioned Style Forum, of course, Tumblr, very, very big at this time.
Yeah, the years kind of run together, so I'm sure I have my time frames mostly off. I was in Style Forum really early, so you, just to relate it back to a question you asked earlier about, like, you know, growing up in personal style. I went to college in Maryland. Connie, you might be familiar with Washington College on the Eastern Shore. It's a little tiny liberal arts school.
Sure.
But it's kind of like preppy adjacent. Like, it's a little, it's a little preppy. It's you know, it's surrounded by like cornfields.
A somewhat moneyed area, like the Eastern Shore can be, anyway.
Yeah, well, it's a story for another podcast, because it's definitely a haves and have-nots situation over there.
Oh,
it's not particularly equitable place to live. But
surely.
so I went to college there, so I was you know, quarantined from a lot of the actual living conditions of people on the Eastern Shore.
Right.
But and then after college, one of my first job out of college was actually doing admissions, college admission stuff. So I went up and down the Northeast to prep schools, to you know, try to get kids to come to Washington College, which was really funny at the time, because those prep schools are nicer than my college. You know, like, there's absolutely no doubt about it. But it gave me a first-hand look at a lot of the schools that I'd only really read about or even heard about in the Northeast, from, like, you know, Phillips Academy, St. George School, all the schools in Connecticut, Deerfield, that kind of stuff. And those schools, like, some of them have like golf courses and stuff, like, it's in their high schools, you know. So it was a funny job. But anyway, that exposed me to those kind of more to those kind of dress traditions, and just like that world is real, you know, to an extent. And after that, I was teaching. So after that, I was teaching middle school and high school on the Eastern Shore, and I was interested in looking older, because I felt really young. I was like 21, teaching, in some cases, 18-year-olds, you know, which is a weird, you know, classroom management was tough for me at that age, especially because I looked really young. So I was trying to dress older, largely to try to appear more authoritative in school, so I didn't just look like another student. And one of the places I discovered to kind of teach me that stuff was Style Forum. So this is, I think, my official join date on Style Forum for my account that still exists is 2004, and I think I probably even joined Style Forum before then. But at some point,
you're way back. You're like,
yeah.
OG.
So
yeah. Do you know when that forum was created?
I have to imagine around 2000, 2002. I don't think I was a member at that point, but
yeah, I think I joined Super Future for the denim section in like 06, I think.
Yeah, I think 06
Style Forum
was
definitely predated that by a few years.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah, yeah, it seems like it. I mean, like you said, the years run together. But.
Yeah, and it was, you know, such a funny place back then, because it was like, there were no fit pics. There was a fit thread, but you just said what you were wearing. So
yeah, dude, I remember like stumbling into that at one point. Like, I think I started on Style Forum when I was in New York. So, like, you know, 2011 ish. But yeah, like, I remember finding that and I was like, wow, this is really what it was, like, describing your outfit.
Are you familiar with Something Awful, Pete? I mean, this definitely is a different discussion, but
I've heard of it. I did not participate.
So they did have a fashion forum, and like that's where I was. And I know other people were in style forum, but like I just thought it was not funny enough.
Style form wasn't? Yeah, especially
it seemed a little over serious, which like I think it is, which there is nothing wrong with being serious, but I sort of think that everything can be funny.
Yeah, and I agree. And forum culture is its own kind of thing, right? I believe, I'm probably giving the history wrong. I believe style forums split off. There were like GQ forums way back when. And some people decided that those were, not right for them for some reason. That's why they started style forum. There's also the Ask Andy forum was.
Of course, Ask Andy. Ask Andy was really one that I was like, this is too serious. Like, this is too much.
That takes serious and multiplies it by about 1,000 times in my experience.
Yeah. So those were, especially to outsiders, and had their own. Definitely had kind of inside jokes and things like that. Like again, like any forum over time.
Right.
Well, but I was really active.
You would just be destroyed. Like if you did something wrong, you would just be destroyed. And so it was very like I mean, of course, the internet is not that friendly of a place, but I think that the style forums are particularly vicious.
They certainly could be, and you're talking about how you present yourself to the world. So when you put yourself, I think there are people certainly who like join style forum or any of those forums and put themselves out there in a. You're really putting your own appearance out there. It's
right.
It's a kind of a vulnerable position to be in, and you don't necessarily know that you're making yourself vulnerable in that way. And then, you get attacked by whoever. I always kind of found style forum to be of them like the friendlier, certainly friendlier than Super Future.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Although Super Future was terrific. I mean, what a source of knowledge, both of them.
Yeah, but, for sure. The denim section was a little bit more like chill than the rest of the site.
Yeah,
I definitely caught some flack on there at various points for,
sure,
my cuff being the wrong height. Yeah.
I mean, it's it's forum culture. It's like know-it-all culture. Totally. That's the vibe. So I was on style forum very early. I had other blogs that were not necessarily style oriented. I had like blogs on that we talked about music with friends, where we talked about music and things like that, with like zero readership, which is fine. And I hope they're all gone. I started a blog. I'm gonna mispronounce the name of my own blog. Branagh, that's spelled BREATHNAIGH.
Oh, right.
At some point, and I did some writing on there in the pre-Tumblr. It was a Blogspot era blog.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, and then I transitioned it to a Tumblr at some point and became a little more image focused and reblogging. Tumblr's kind of way of doing things. And that was a lot of fun. And at that point, I was reading a lot of the other blogs. Continuous Lean, I5 Style, starts with typewriters. I think that was Jeremy Kirkland's blog back then.
Right.
John Moy's blog, All Plaid Out, 10 Engines, Sartorially Inclined, Wax Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Wax Wayne! Shout out, Jake.
Yeah.
Come on the pod, bro.
Yeah. So I was reading all that stuff. And it was great. I mean, it was a really fun time, I think, for and a lot of growth in that kind of cultural space at that time. And I do kind of miss that era of Tumblr.
Yeah, same. It was just like it was like a snapshot, like when you really think back on it, and it's like, this was cool as shit. And it's so sad that it just kind of disappeared.
Sometimes I think like I was a different age than you guys were when that was happening. Like I was in my undergrad, and so everything was the shit basically. I had all of this freedom. I could do whatever I wanted, blah, blah, blah. But hear you talk about it, it seems like it really was just a great time. Like it was a great time for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, there was no like it's hard to really pin down exactly why the conversation is a lot different today. I know both like the online space has evolved and just style in general has evolved and like people's takes on style, because that was like an era of like hot style takes. There's a lot of people, including myself, like learning about stuff and writing about it at the same time, and there really wasn't anybody to say, "Hey, shut up," like
yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about. Occasionally that would happen. And there was, kind of an older guard too, who I think knew more and was like more involved in actual either clothing industry or just like had been wearing clothes for a long time that could really give you some knowledge. But that's, I think, I think about it kind of in some ways as a glory days, but I'm sure there's some people who thought it was annoying or stupid or
right.
Didn't know what it was talking about. So, but it was a fun time.
You can't please everyone. Is that how you kind of started writing? Like, I know you've been editing and contributing to Put This On forever, but kind of how did you get into writing and did the clothes come first, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, well, I mean, writing, I've always done writing. I went to college for English and creative writing.
Nice.
I had a really good creative nonfiction professor back then who kind of like opened up the idea of like personal essays and that nonfiction wasn't just like history books. So that was kind of cool, and I always kind of had that in my back pocket. Even and my jobs coming out of college were often writing oriented. I wrote proposals for government contractors and nonprofits and things for a while. So even though that is like a different muscle writing wise, it's always kind of been my job, and that's my profession. I'm still an editor, not clothing related. Yeah. So yeah, I've always been writing kind of on the side, sometimes freelance, sometimes not professionally at all. Back then, I think. I don't remember exactly what the order of events was. I was working a little bit with Folk, the co-owner of Style Forum, and I worked with back then. I think through my blog, I met the guys from Très Bien Shop.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I was writing some copy for them, and that involved kind of meeting and interviewing some designers and things, which was really cool and opened a lot of doors. Back then, and with Style Forum with Folk, I think I don't remember the first year we went. It was probably 2010. Around then, we went to Capsule in New York, and that wasn't really. I'm not gonna say like we were like blazing trails, but that wasn't really a thing at that point yet. Like that was really it was kind of pre. A couple years later, like a lot of the blog guys were working for a lot of those companies too. So like there was a lot of kind of blog presence.
Yeah.
Not to minimize it, that was awesome too. It was like all of a sudden I knew everybody at those things.
Right.
But the first time, I think we just stayed in I stayed with like 3 other guys in the Style Forum members in a hotel room in Lower East Side, and went to Capsule when it was in like some kind of like converted church. I think it was in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Down there, and it was fun. But like we got to meet like. Yuki from Yucatan and Takeshi from Post Overalls, and Mark McNary was there, and it was a weird place to be because we were young and like we had no professional experience or really any like anything to offer. I don't think that people had any idea what we were doing there.
Right, yeah.
Taking
they didn't
pictures.
see what was coming either, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, neither did we. It wasn't like
right.
we had any particular agenda other than like, hey, we can see next year's clothes now.
Yeah.
You
kind of just immersing yourself in the industry.
Yeah. So that was really fun, and that was that's kind of how I got into writing, and doing it kind of semi professionally, at least as a freelancer. And then I knew Jesse a little bit, Jesse Thorne from Put This On. And after he had done, I think he might have already done both seasons of the videos, he was working with Derek, and they were looking for other writers. So that's when I joined and started contributing to Put This On, which is like the best gig ever, because it was just kind of like write about whatever you want to write about. Like do some research, find a cool movie, interview somebody, whatever works, go for it. So that's been really fun. I don't contribute so much these days. I'm still pretty heavily involved in searching stuff for eBay roundups, but I know Derek's the big driver behind the real deep dives these days. But yeah, Put This On's great.
Yeah, Connor and I were talking yesterday about how, like, in the space that it occupies, it's definitely like the most academic, like, of writing about menswear, and like it's such a cool thing that is still happening, and like there's still that kind of like fan base that you guys have cultivated for it.
Yeah, I think it's still a really good resource for people.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's authoritative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
not in an obnoxious way. Like, there is an ethos, I guess, that the crew has that people are not challenging the takes on the site a lot.
I think you're pinning down exactly the vibe that we've gone for over the years. Which I think it tries not to be. I hesitate to say not trend driven, but like it's not like I'm talking about going to Capsule, or I know Pity Uomo was in Florence this week, and there's all sorts of cool stuff that you can see when those shows happen. But Put This On like tries to kind of stand apart from that. It's not about coverage or brands, or it's not necessarily. Early on, it was very much about classic dressing, and I think it's as the culture has moved beyond that, it's moved beyond that too. But yeah, it tries to be approachable and smart about things. And one of the things I think we really have tried to do is rather than just like pointing at something and saying this looks really cool, it's like, well, why do we think it looks cool? Let's think about that for a little while,
right.
And dive a little deeper on it. So yeah, it's I think still a very worthwhile site, and I think we still get a lot of people. There's such a depth to the archives. We still get a lot of people who are just looking for like literally how to tie a tie. You can still find that and Put This On. So
yeah. I mean, I know I've done plenty of deep dives into the archives, and like, I don't know, always, like you said, you learn something, and it's not the like, oh, your cuff is 1/16 of an inch too short for, or your break is whatever. It's like, oh, this is stuff that we actually care about, and we want to like inform, not just tell you that something is wrong, or this is not what you should go for. And like the approach has always been like such a just kind of like basis for learning, and I think that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think Derek's had some articles over the past couple of years about like springboard wardrobes, about like start a basis. Here's some things you can start with, and that allows you to explore lots of other stuff. So versus saying, I think we're a little allergic to saying like here's the 10 essentials, because I mean that's just been a concept that's been driven into the ground.
Right.
It's really bad.
But just like here's some things here's some items you can start with, here's some categories, and here's some ideas for not necessarily capsule wardrobes, but like concepts that might be interesting to you, and pick one and explore it and see if it works for you as you develop your own personal style.
So given you how into clothing you are and your knowledge, did you ever consider like going into the industry at all, like more in-depth kind of like level?
Yes, except I have nothing to offer. I have no skills. I'm a terrible salesman.
Yeah, right with you.
Yeah. So, I salute the people who succeed in the industry, but like I see myself as very much like a commentator kind of role. I don't take it back to the cooking analogy, but I could never design clothes the way people design clothes, or do anything like that. I don't see myself as a particularly terrific salesman. And those are like, that's the nature of business. So like you have to be kind of good at some of those things in order to do it. So I'd certainly be interested in working more closely with with clothes, and I think that the guys who have done cool stuff in the space, whether it's other people in media, like a lot of the people we talked about with the early blogs have gone on to some careers in menswear, whether it's Jeremy with Blamo. It's been cool to watch people succeed, like Greg at No Man Walks Alone with his store. That's really, really cool, and really been kind of a tastemaker over the years.
Yeah.
That's all really cool. I just can't see myself doing that.
Right.
So yeah, I've thought about it. I just when I was a kid, for a few years I really wanted to be an architect, and then I kind of sorted out that you have to be good at math and drawing, and I'm not good at those things. So like, I don't really know what I wanted to do other than build cool stuff. So I kind of feel the same way as an adult now about the clothing industry. Is that I'd like to be more involved, and I really admire people who do a good job with it. It's just I think that other than like having decent taste, I'm not tuned in enough and never was to like be like a trend forecaster. Like there's like a handful of those kind of career paths into those kind of industries, which just like I just don't quite have what it takes. I don't think. The other thing I'm missing is probably a really strong work ethic. I'm a terrible procrastinator, so some people get in there and just work their asses off and they make it work, and that's tough. So I just gave you all the reasons not to hire me. Anybody who was thinking about hiring somebody.
I like it. You're a pundit. Fashion and clothing.
Yeah, it's the best I have to offer is takes.
Yeah.
Even my takes have softened a lot over the years. I'm a lot live and let live kind of guy these days.
Well, we have prepared an opportunity for a take here, which would be to ask you, and I'm not trying to be leading with this, but like, what is the menswear scene like in DC? We know that there's a certain reputation, but we're wondering, are things getting better? I guess.
To get a real answer to that, you probably have to ask somebody who's gone outside in the past 3 years.
Yeah. Right.
No, I think that DC you're right, it has a reputation. I think that when I think about like stereotypical DC office wear, it's really, really inoffensive. Like that's kind of the point, is to be to not cause a stir. And when you think of people who work in high levels of government, they're usually trying to dress. The vibe is you have to dress formally because it's like one of the last places in the country where you have to dress.
Where it
might have to wear a suit and tie.
Right.
Yeah, you actually have to wear those things, but you can't dress ostentatiously at all because that sends the wrong signals. So
I was never going to fit in DC.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention another podcast. You worked in government for a while, and I remember it was Joseph A. Bank or Marshalls or something like that was your suit source, and I think that's very typical.
It is. Yeah, I mean, like Al Franken, the disgraced Al Franken, told me he liked my socks once, and they were red. You know what I mean? But like, my family was always trying to tell me like, why the fuck are you wearing that? Like, don't you understand where you're going? And I just, of course, like, didn't get it. I wanted to be like loud, and it's not a loud place.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And I think for people the main careers in DC, I think that's still true. Although I think that slim fit took hold really strong in like the mid 2010s, and there's a suit supply here, and I think they've done really well with kind of like still conservative somewhat, but conservative now means I think more slim fit. So by the time we kind of left the office a couple of years ago, I think what I was seeing mostly was still like again, trying not to rock the boat. So a lot of blue Oxfords, a lot of blue gingham shirts, gray slim fit pants, whether they're cotton or wool, and black shoes. And that's pretty much what people try to wear to work. Right. I do think that DC has, they still have a pretty strong music scenes down here, various music scenes, not just punk, not just like Discord adjacent, but I think people dress in those scenes can dress kind of cool. there's a really strong, I think, streetwear scene in DC.
Oh yeah.
And skate scene in DC, and there's some good shops for that stuff here. Like Commonwealth's been here forever. Somewhere, Somewhere is a good store in DC now that carries some interesting stuff. New Balance is huge down here. New Balance sneakers is like really the everyday streetwear sneaker in DC. So like it does have I think it does have an identity. DC. It may not be exactly what the work stuff is still, I think, just overly, like, just very conservative and really trying. You don't want to make waves with what you're wearing. You don't want anybody to notice that. That makes sense, but it doesn't mean DC's as boring as maybe it gets. It gets left for it. Yeah.
I will say that you describing it as inoffensive might be the most offensive description of a style that I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah,
that is like a soft, slight whatever. It's like it's not a backwards compliment, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, it's like I understand it.
You're telling the truth. You're telling the truth, but you're not saying the truth.
Right. Yeah, like it's conservative, I understand, but I'm sorry, a Macy's slim fit suit is gonna be offensive to me no matter what. So
I get that. Take. I mean, downtown. Because I'm thinking about like where I work near. Well, when I go to the office, I work near the Capital One Center, I think it's called now, where the Wizards play. There used to be a J. Crew down there. Now I think it's just a Macy's. There's an Alden store. I mean, we have an Alden store. Okay. There's a new luxury block of shops with like a Loro Piana and Paul Stewart and stuff. But again, I'm not describing anything particularly groundbreaking there. It's just
right, just solid classic shit.
More sources for blue shirts and gray pants.
Yeah, and as long as it fits well, more power to you. So Pete, you've been kind of into clothing and collecting, for lack of a better word, clothing for a long time. Like, what's your absolute favorite thing that you own?
It's the red sweatshirt.
The red sweatshirt.
Outside of the red sweatshirt.
It's my, what was the name of the sled? Rosebud? Is that right?
Yeah, Rosebud.
Rosebud.
Thinking back to my red sweatshirt. My favorite piece probably does change. If I went down in my basement and dug through all my boxes of crap. I don't have a storage unit. That's one thing I know. I've talked to guys who have storage units for their clothes, and I haven't gotten there yet. I mean, mostly because I live in a like suburban single family home, so I have a basement where I can shove stuff. I think the favorite piece I have and that I really held on to for a long time is a main guide coat from the Woolrich Woolen Mills Hunting Noir collection. It was like, I think it's like 2010. I don't think I got it until like 2015, but it's from 2010. It's like blue and black, kind of again, like kind of big plaid kind of pattern, like not pattern, intentionally not pattern matched, shawl collar wool jacket.
Yeah, such a good design.
Yeah. And I wore those for a long time. That was like my favorite design. So I just had like a navy one, and I had this kind of more slightly more colorful one, I guess. And I really held on to that for a while. It definitely does not fit me anymore. But that's probably the favorite single item of clothing, and it just has like a lot to good connotations and good memories to that piece for me.
Yeah,
well, don't take it to my cobbler.
I will not take it to your cobbler, or I probably won't take it anywhere else. I'm going to leave it in the dry cleaning bag on the rack in the basement,
out of harm's way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Pete. This has been a delight. I guess Matt will take us out, and if Matt is still there.
It's been great talking to y'all.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Also, thank you. From my side, it's always fun to chat with with people that have kind of like been into the same shit that Connor and I have, like internet menswear culture and whatnot. Like, I don't know. It's always fun to get someone's take on that subject.
Well, this is the earlier, like you're spotting like a pair of Converse from across the cafeteria,
Right.
And you're like, that is my person right there.
As long as the right bands are written on the outsole, there you go. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Well, yeah, we always like to give our guests a chance to shout out whatever they want to shout out. So have at it.
Yeah, I mean, keep reading. Put This On. Check out the site. Just putthison.com. Again, I spend a lot of time each week looking for good eBay finds for everybody. So I try to put the best stuff out there for everybody to find. I'm P Anderson 2 on Twitter, and I'm gonna screw up my Instagram handle because I think I'm Branag on I should probably mention that I'm Branag on Instagram. It's BREATHNAIGH, and that is an Irish word for like look or observe. That's the reason, and it's the same. It's hard to pronounce. It's the same kind of root as like a Branagh device. So if you're trying to figure out, it's the same kind of, not exactly the same, but it's the same roots there. So that's
I've
that's
wondered
why.
about this for.
I was pretty sure because
because you're fucking
Connor,
Irish.
My name Connor Conchabar, lover of hounds, the last king of Ireland.
There you go. That's a good name. I think when I started the blog, I had just been to Ireland for a couple of weeks, and I have some Irish ancestry too, and that's why I was casting around for a good blog name that wasn't just like, that was the era of like Wolf Parade, Wolf Eyes, all the different, those kind of bands. I wanted to differentiate myself a little bit, so I named my blog something completely unpronounceable and untranslatable, and it really paid off.
Of course.
Hell yeah.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Yeah, good convo, good discussion. I'm Matt Smith at Rebels Rogues on Instagram.
And I'm Connor Fowler at Connor Fowler.
And Connor officially checked yesterday. We have still not gotten one single fucking email. So, apocalypsedoes@gmail.com. Send us an emoji. Send us something so I can stop doing this dumb
Forward
bit
us your spam. Anything.
Yeah, something that isn't spam is all we're asking for. But yeah, take care. Thanks for listening. Thanks again, Pete.
Thanks, guys.